A stranger from the stars came knocking, and he looked exactly like me. The arrival captain Marcus Holloway stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the swirling vortex of hyperspace collapse around them as they dropped back into normal space. The sight of Earth's solar system never failed to stir something deep in his chest, but today felt different. Today, he carried news that would shake humanity to its core. "Captain," Communications Officer Lieutenant Zara Okafor called. From her station, her voice tight with confusion, "I'm picking up a transmission from Sol Station. They're requesting immediate docking clearance for an unscheduled diplomatic vessel." Marcus frowned. "We're the only ship scheduled to arrive today. Run a full sensor sweep." The main display flickered to life, showing the familiar outline of Sol Station orbiting Earth. But there, approaching from the opposite vector, was another ship. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice as he recognized the sleek, angular design. It was identical to the Prometheus in every detail except for one crucial difference. The hull bore markings he'd never seen before. "Sir," Ensign Tom Bradley reported from the sensor station, his young face pale. "The ship's transponder identifies it as the UES Prometheus. Registration number, identical to ours." "That's impossible," Marcus muttered. But even as he spoke, he knew the universe had a way of making the impossible routine. 3 months ago, they'd encountered the veil, a phenomenon that had torn holes in space-time itself. The science team had theorized about parallel dimensions, alternate realities bleeding through. He'd hoped they were wrong. "Captain Holloway." The comm system crackled to life with a voice that made Marcus's spine tingle with recognition. It was his own voice speaking from the other ship. "I request permission to come aboard. We need to talk." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Marcus stared at the view screen, his mind racing through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Finally, he keyed the comm. "This is Captain Marcus Holloway of the UES Prometheus. Identify yourself and state your intentions." A pause, then. "I am Captain Marcus Holloway of the UES Prometheus, and I'm here to warn you about what's coming." 2 hours later, Marcus stood in Docking Bay 7, flanked by Security Chief Rebecca Torres and her team. The airlock cycled open with a pneumatic hiss, and Marcus felt his world tilt on its axis. The man who stepped through looked exactly like him, same height, same build, same weathered face marked by years of command. But there was something in the other Marcus's eyes, a haunted quality that spoke of experiences beyond imagination. "You're looking at yourself and wondering if you've lost your mind," the other Marcus said, his voice carrying the same cadence but with an underlying weariness. "I had the same reaction when I first encountered the phenomenon." "You're from another dimension," Marcus stated, surprised by how easily the words came. "Another timeline, another reality where humanity made different choices." The stranger gestured to Rebecca and her security team. "You can lower your weapons. I'm not here to conquer or replace anyone. I'm here because in my reality we ignored the warnings. Earth is gone. Humanity is scattered across the galaxy, hunted by something we awakened when we delved too deep into the veil." Rebecca's grip tightened on her weapon. "What kind of something?" The other Marcus's expression darkened. "We called them the Devourers. They exist in the spaces between realities, feeding on dimensional energy. Every time we used veil technology, we drew their attention. They consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space where worlds once thrived." "And you think they're coming here?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer from the desperation in his doppelganger's eyes. "They're already here. The dimensional tiers your scientists have been studying? Those aren't random phenomena. They're feeding wounds, places where the Devourers have begun to break through. You have maybe 6 months before they fully manifest in this reality." Marcus felt the weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders. "What do you propose we do?" Other Marcus reached into his jacket and withdrew a data crystal. "Everything my reality learned about fighting them. Ship designs, weapons configurations, evacuation protocols. Most importantly, How to seal the dimensional barriers permanently. At what cost? Everything. The process will destroy all veil. Technology. Strand every human ship currently in hyperspace and collapse the network of jump gates that connect your colonies. Humanity will be isolated but alive. Marcus took the crystal, its weight somehow greater than its physical mass. How do I know you're telling the truth? His doppelgänger smiled sadly. Because I'm the only survivor of the UES Prometheus crew. Everyone you care about, everyone standing on this deck right now. I watched them die. I won't let it happen again. The Evidence Admiral Patricia Vance stood in the secure briefing room aboard Sol Station, studying the impossible data streaming. Across her displays, beside her, Dr. James Kowalski, humanity's leading expert on dimensional physics, frantically cross-referenced readings with the information provided by the alternate Marcus Holloway. The mathematics check out, Kowalski admitted reluctantly, his Polish accent thickening with stress. The quantum signatures, the dimensional resonance patterns, it's all consistent with theoretical models we've only dreamed about. But Admiral, the implications are terrifying, Vance finished. She'd commanded fleets against the Zephyrian, collective and negotiated peace with the crystalline hierarchy, but nothing had prepared her for this. Captain Holloway, walk me through this again. In your timeline, when did humanity first encounter these devourers? The alternate Marcus sat across from his counterpart, the resemblance still unsettling everyone in the room. 18 months. After first contact with the Veil, we thought we were exploring new frontiers, pushing the boundaries of human achievement. Instead, we were ringing the dinner bell for cosmic predators. Show them the recordings, the original Marcus urged. He'd spent the last 3 days reviewing his doppelganger's data, and the horror of it still hadn't fully sunk in. The alternate Marcus activated a holographic projector, and the room filled with images that defied comprehension. Massive, writhing entities that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, their forms shifting between dimensions as they consumed entire planets. The footage showed Earth's final moments, continents dissolving into streams of pure energy, flowing into mouths that existed in folded space. Jesus Christ, whispered General Frank Rodriguez, head of Colonial Defense. How do you fight something like that? You don't, the alternate Marcus replied grimly. You can only run, hide, and hope they lose interest. In my reality, we tried everything: antimatter weapons, gravitational bombs, even weaponized black holes. Nothing worked. They exist partially outside our dimensional framework, so conventional weapons pass through them like shadows. Dr. Kowalski leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear. But you mentioned weapons that could affect them. How is that possible? Resonance weapons. They work by destabilizing the dimensional barriers that allow the devourers to phase between realities. It's like, imagine trying to walk on a bridge that's constantly shifting between solid and ethereal. The weapons force them to exist entirely in our dimension, making them vulnerable. Admiral Vance studied the technical specifications scrolling past. The power requirements are enormous. We'd need to retrofit every major ship in the fleet, and even then, you can only buy time, the alternate Marcus confirmed. The real solution is the Dimensional Cascade Protocol. It seals all dimensional barriers permanently, but the energy release would destroy every piece of Veil technology in the galaxy, stranding millions of colonists, Rodriguez pointed out. Better stranded than dead. The alternate Marcus's voice carried the weight of personal experience. I've seen what happens when they reach populated systems. They don't just kill, they unmake things. Reality itself becomes unstable around them. The original Marcus studied his counterpart, noting the tremor in his hands, the way his eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the room. How long have you been running? 7 years. Subjective time. I've watched 17 different versions of humanity fall to the devourers. Some fought better than others, but the outcome was always the same. This is the first reality I've found where I arrived before the feeding began. Admiral Vance made her decision. I'm calling an emergency session of the Colonial Council. Every major world needs to hear this. She paused, looking at the two Marcuses. The question is, how do we convince them that interdimensional parasites are real without causing mass panic? You show them this, the alternate Marcus said, pulling up another holographic display. This one showed Earth's final transmission, billions of voices screaming in unison as reality itself unraveled around them. And you tell them that pride and disbelief killed my humanity. Don't let it kill yours. Dr. Kowalski cleared his throat. There's another problem. The dimensional cascade protocol requires precise timing across multiple star systems. Every veil generator in human space needs to overload simultaneously, or the barriers won't seal properly. We're talking about coordination across hundreds of light years. Which is why we need to start now, the alternate Marcus insisted. The dimensional incursions are accelerating. I've been tracking the patterns across multiple realities. You have maybe 4 months before they achieve full manifestation. Admiral Vance nodded grimly. Then we'd better get started. Captain Holloway, both of you. I'm putting you in charge of fleet modifications. Dr. Kowalski, I want crash courses in resonance weapon theory for every chief engineer in the colonial fleet. General Rodriguez, start planning evacuation protocols for the outer colonies. As the meeting broke up, the original Marcus caught his doppelganger by the arm. There's something you're not telling us. I can see it in your eyes. The alternate Marcus looked away. The Cascade Protocol. It's not just about destroying veil technology. The energy release will also collapse the dimensional barriers that allow consciousness to transfer between realities. Anyone who's crossed over, like me, will cease to exist. You're going to die to save us. I died 7 years ago when I watched my Earth burn. This is just finishing what the Devourers started. The alternate Marcus met his counterpart's eyes. The question is, are you willing to let me? The preparation, the shipyards above Mars had never seen such frantic activity. Captain Nolan Reeves watched from the observation deck of the UES Harbinger as teams of engineers swarmed over his ship's hull, installing the massive resonance cannon arrays that might be humanity's only hope. The sight still seemed surreal, retrofitting a peaceful exploration vessel into a weapon of dimensional warfare. Captain, Chief Engineer Lisa Park approached, her face streaked with grease and exhaustion. The resonance matrix is installed, but I'm not comfortable with the power distribution. We're pushing the fusion reactors beyond their design parameters. What's the alternative? Reeves asked, though he already knew the answer. We get one shot before the ship tears itself apart from the inside. Park wiped her hands on a rag, her expression grim. These weapons weren't meant for ships our size. The alternate Holloway's designs assume we have battleship-class power cores. Across the shipyard, similar scenes played out on dozens of vessels. The colonial fleet had been mobilized with unprecedented speed, but the scale of the retrofit was staggering. Every ship needed resonance weapons, enhanced shielding, and modified life support systems capable of functioning in areas where dimensional barriers had been compromised. Sir, Communications Officer David Chen called from behind him. Priority. Message from Seoul Station. Admiral Vance wants all senior staff for emergency briefing in 30 minutes. Reeves nodded, taking one last look at his transformed ship. The Harbinger had been designed to map new star systems and establish first contact with alien species. Now it bristled with weapons that could wound reality itself. The briefing room aboard Seoul Station was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every major colony world sat beside fleet commanders, their faces reflecting the same mixture of disbelief and determination that had become humanity's default expression over the past month. Admiral Vance took the podium, her uniform crisp, despite the obvious signs of sleepless nights. Ladies and gentlemen, we've received confirmation of dimensional incursions in the Kepler 442 system. The outer monitoring stations recorded reality distortions consistent with devourer manifestation. A murmur of fear rippled through the assembly. Kepler 442 was home to New Geneva, a thriving agricultural world with over 2 million colonists. The good news, Vance continued, is that our advance warning system worked. We detected the incursion 6 hours before full manifestation. The bad news is that timeline is accelerating. Dr. Kowalski? The physicist stood, his face pale but determined. The dimensional barriers are deteriorating faster than our worst-case projections. We estimate 3 weeks before multiple incursions occur simultaneously across human space. Which means, the alternate Marcus Holloway interjected from his position near the front, we need to implement the Cascade Protocol ahead of schedule. The retrofits won't be complete, but we can't wait. Colony Representative Janet O'Connor from Proxima Centauri stood abruptly. You're asking us to destroy our civilization to save it. The jump gates, the communication networks, the trade routes that sustain our colonies, all of it will be gone. Better to live in isolation than not live at all, the alternate Marcus replied. I've seen the alternative. Trust me, death is preferable to what the Devourers do. How can we trust the word of someone who might be a complete fabrication? Demanded Senator William Cross from the Tau Ceti delegation. For all we know, this is an elaborate hoax designed to destroy human civilization from within. The room erupted in arguments, fears, and suspicions that had been building for weeks, finally boiling over. The original Marcus Holloway rose, his voice cutting through the chaos. Because I've seen the sensor data. I've watched the recordings. I've looked into my own eyes and seen the truth written there in blood and loss. He activated the holographic display showing the latest readings from Kepler 442. The dimensional tiers are real. The energy signatures match everything we've been told. And in 18 hours, New Geneva will cease to exist unless we act. Dr. Elizabeth Tran, the colony's chief scientist, appeared via quantum entanglement communicator, her image flickering with interference. Captain Holloway is correct. We're evacuating the population now, but our ships are already experiencing dimensional phase lock. The Devourers are preventing us from entering hyperspace. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the Devourers could trap ships in normal space, evacuation became impossible, which is why we're implementing a new strategy, Admiral Vance announced. Operation Doorstop. We're going to use the resonance weapons to create a localized dimensional barrier around New Geneva, buying time for evacuation while we finalize the Cascade Protocol. That's insane, Dr. Kowalski protested. The power requirements would drain entire star systems, and if the barrier fails, then 2 million people die, Vance replied firmly. But if we don't try, they die anyway, and we learn nothing about how to protect the other colonies. Captain Reeves stood, his decision made. The Harbinger volunteers for the mission, Admiral. Our crew understands the risks. One by one, other captains rose. The UES Dauntless under Captain Maria Santos, the UES Resolute under Captain James Morrison, the UES Defiance under Captain Ann Walker. Within minutes, half the assembled fleet had volunteered for what amounted to a suicide mission. The alternate Marcus watched this display of human courage with something approaching wonder. In my reality, we were too afraid to take such risks. We waited, hoped for a miracle, and died in our beds while the universe burned around us. Then we'll show you how humans really fight, Captain Santos declared, her voice carrying the determination of someone who'd already faced death among the stars. Not with fear, but with purpose. As the briefing broke up and captains returned to their ships, the original Marcus caught his doppelgänger near the exit. You're not coming with us, are you? My place is here, coordinating the Cascade Protocol. Someone needs to ensure the barriers seal properly across all realities. The alternate Marcus paused. Besides, you don't need me to show you how to be brave. You never did. What if we fail? Then you'll have died as humans should, fighting for something greater than yourselves. That's more than my reality managed. As the fleet prepared to jump to Kepler 442, humanity held its breath. In the depths of space, ancient horrors stirred, drawn by the scent of dimensional energy and the promise of fresh realities to consume. But for the first time in any timeline, they would face a species that refused to go quietly into the dark. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The battle, the Kepler 442 system was dying. Captain Nolan Reeves watched from the Harbinger's bridge as reality itself seemed to unravel around New Geneva. Massive tiers in space-time leaked impossible geometries, and through them, the Devourers pressed against the barriers of normal existence like tumors of living void. Dimensional distortion at 47% and climbing. reported Science Officer Lieutenant Commander Rachel Kim, her voice tight with professional calm that barely concealed her terror. The planet's magnetic field is destabilizing. We're looking at complete atmospheric loss within 6 hours. Status of the civilian evacuation? Reeves asked, though he feared the answer. 1,800 vessels trapped in dimensional phase lock, Communications Officer Chen replied. They can't achieve hyperspace transition. The Devourers are actively preventing dimensional access. On the main screen, New Geneva appeared as a world caught between realities. Parts of the surface flickered in and out of existence, while massive structures that hurt to look at directly extruded from the dimensional tiers. The Devourers weren't just consuming the planet, they were transforming it into a gateway between worlds. All ships, this is Admiral Vance aboard the Dauntless, the comm crackled. We're implementing doorstop protocol. Form defensive perimeter around the civilian vessels. Resonance weapons hot. The fleet, 37 ships of various classes, all hastily retrofitted with experimental weapons, arranged itself in a protective formation. The Harbinger took point, its massive resonance cannon arrays powered by reactors pushed beyond their design limits. Targeting solution acquired, reported Weapons Officer Lieutenant Torres. Multiple dimensional intrusion points locked. Fire, Reeves ordered. The resonance weapons discharged with a sound that existed more in the mind than in the ears, a deep thrumming that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull and into the bones of everyone aboard. Beams of twisted space-time lanced out from the fleet, striking the dimensional tiers and causing them to collapse inward like wounded mouths. For a moment, Reeves dared to hope. The intrusion points sealed, the geometric impossibilities faded, and New Geneva appeared almost normal again. Then the Devourers struck back. They came not from normal space, but from the folded dimensions between realities, materializing inside the fleet's formation like nightmares made manifest. Each one was roughly the size of a battleship, but possessed of a geometry that defied description, surfaces that curved in directions that didn't exist, appendages that reached through space without crossing the distance between. Evasive maneuvers, Reeves shouted as one of the creatures materialized directly off the Harbinger's starboard bow. The ship's AI screamed proximity warnings as reality became negotiable in the creature's presence. The Devourer struck the UES Vigilant with something that wasn't quite a weapon and wasn't quite a touch. The ship simply stopped. Not destroyed. Not disabled, but frozen in a moment of time while the creature fed on the dimensional energy that held its atoms together. All weapons, target the manifested entities. Admiral Vance's voice cut through the chaos. Don't let them establish full, dimensional presence. The fleet's resonance weapons swiveled to engage the Devourers directly. Captain Santos aboard the Dauntless scored the first hit, her ship's main cannon punching a hole through something that might have been the creature's center mass. The Devourer writhed, its form becoming more solid as the weapon forced it to exist entirely in normal space. It's working, Santos reported. Resonance weapons forced them into our dimensional framework. But the victory was short-lived. The wounded Devourer lashed out with renewed fury, its now solid form still possessing capabilities that defied physics. Energy beams that traveled backward through time struck the Dauntless before she could fire again, aging her hull by centuries and seconds. "Santos!" Vance called out as the Dauntless began to crumble, her hull plates falling away like autumn leaves. Still operational. Santos's voice came through static and temporal distortion. Buying time. For the civilians. The battle raged across the system as more Devourers manifested. Captain Morrison's Resolute took 3 of the creatures head-on, its overlapping resonance fields creating a zone of stable reality around the trapped civilian ships. Captain Walker's Defiance launched suicide runs at the largest dimensional tiers, her crew sacrificing themselves to seal the gateways. Aboard the Harbinger, Reeves watched his fleet die ship by ship, but their sacrifice was working. The civilian vessels were beginning to escape the dimensional phase lock as the Devourers were forced to focus on the military threat. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Kim reported, "I'm reading massive dimensional instability from the planet's surface. The Devourers are attempting to establish a permanent gateway. Can we stop it?" not with conventional weapons. We'd need to channel all remaining resonance energy directly into the planet's core, create a dimensional implosion that seals the gateway from the inside. Reeves understood immediately. A suicide run. Sir, I'm receiving a priority transmission. From Sol Station, Chen announced. It's the alternate Captain Holloway. The main screen flickered, showing the haggard face of Marcus Holloway's doppelgänger. Behind him, the command center of Sol Station buzzed with frantic activity. Captain Reeves, we're initiating the Cascade Protocol in 30 minutes. The dimensional barriers across human space will seal permanently, but we need you to keep the Devourers busy until then. What about the civilian ships? They'll have to reach minimum safe distance before we activate the protocol. Anyone caught in a dimensional anomaly when it triggers will be... The alternate Marcus paused. There won't be enough left of them to matter. Reeves looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Young, old, seasoned veterans and fresh Academy graduates, all united in their determination to buy humanity time. Understood. We'll hold them as long as we can. Captain, the alternate Marcus added, his voice softer, tell your crew that their sacrifice means something. In my reality, we never had the courage to make this choice. You're saving not just this timeline, but every possible future where humanity might exist. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence except for the sounds of battle raging outside. Reeves stood, his decision made. All hands. This is the captain. We're going to ram New Geneva's dimensional gateway. Full power to the resonance arrays, overload the reactors, and prepare for dimensional implosion. It's been an honor serving with you all. As the Harbinger turned toward the dying world, her crew worked with quiet efficiency. They were about to attempt something that had never been tried before, the controlled collapse of a dimensional gateway using their ship as a resonance weapon. The mathematics suggested it might work. The mathematics also suggested they would be atomized in the process. Dimensional gateway achieved, Lieutenant Commander Kim announced. We're committed to the run. Through the view screen, New Geneva grew larger, its surface now more dimensional anomaly than planet. The Devourers swarmed around the Harbinger, but the ship's overlapping resonance fields kept them at bay. 20 seconds to impact, Torres reported. Resonance arrays at maximum. Power? Reactor overload in 10, 9, 8. Reeves closed his eyes and thought of Earth, of blue skies and green fields, of a humanity that would live to see tomorrow because of what they did here. 7, 6, 5. For humanity, he whispered. 4, 3, 2. The Harbinger struck New Geneva's dimensional core and became something more than a ship. For one brief, impossible moment, Captain Nolan Reeves and his crew existed in every dimension simultaneously. Their consciousness spread across infinite realities. They saw the truth of the Devourers, ancient entities that had consumed countless universes, each victory making them stronger, more real. But they also saw something else. In every reality where humans existed, they fought. Sometimes they won, sometimes they lost, but they never stopped fighting. The dimensional gateway collapsed, taking the Devourers with it. Across the Kepler 442 system, the surviving civilian ships achieved hyperspace and fled toward safety. Behind them, a star system burned with the light of collapsing realities and heroes whose names would be remembered as long as humanity endured. The Battle of New Geneva was over. The war for humanity's survival was just beginning. The price of tomorrow. The command center aboard Sol Station had become humanity's nerve center in the final hours before the Cascade Protocol. Admiral Vance stood before a massive holographic display showing the status of every human world, every fleet, every installation that would be affected by the dimensional barrier collapse. The sight was overwhelming. Thousands of lights representing billions of lives, all dependent on a plan that had never been tested. Final countdown to protocol activation, announced Dr. Kowalski, his voice hoarse from 3 days without sleep. All dimensional generators are synchronized. We have confirmation from 93% of human installations. What about the remaining 7%? Vance asked, though she suspected the answer. Lost contact, presumed compromised by devourer incursions. The physicist's hands trembled as he made final adjustments to the quantum field generators. We're proceeding. Without them. Across the room, the original Marcus Holloway coordinated fleet movements while his alternate self prepared for the final phase of the protocol. The resemblance was still unsettling, but over the past month, subtle differences had emerged. The alternate Marcus carried himself with the weight of absolute loss, while the original retained the hope of someone fighting for a future rather than avenging the past. "Captain," the alternate Marcus called out, "I need you to understand something about the Cascade Protocol. The dimensional barriers won't just seal, they'll crystallize. Humanity will be permanently isolated from the rest of the galaxy. No more exploration beyond our local cluster. No more contact with other species, no more pushing the boundaries of the possible." "Better than extinction," Marcus replied, but his voice carried uncertainty. "Is it?" The alternate Marcus moved to the central console, his fingers dancing over controls that would reshape reality itself. "In my timeline before the Devourers came, we were on the verge of transcendence. We'd begun to understand the fundamental structure of existence itself. We could have become something more than human. And that's what attracted them," Dr. Kowalski pointed out. "Every species that achieves dimensional manipulation draws their attention. Perhaps isolation is the price of survival." The communication board erupted with status reports from across human space. Captain Santos, somehow having survived the destruction of her ship and now commanding a civilian vessel, reported successful evacuation of the Proxima Centauri colonies. General Rodriguez confirmed that the Tau Ceti defense fleet had held the line against 3 separate incursions. Colony after colony checked in, their populations fleeing toward the designated safe zones. But reports of devourer manifestations were increasing. The entities had learned from the Battle of New Geneva, adapting their tactics to prevent easy dimensional targeting. They no longer manifested fully in normal space, instead existing as partial intrusions that could strike without, exposing themselves to resonance weapons. "We're running out of time," Admiral Vance announced. "Dr. Kowalski, are the calculations confirmed?" "Triple-checked by every physicist in human space," he confirmed. "The cascade will propagate at exactly the speed of light, creating an expanding sphere of sealed reality centered on Sol. Any human installation within the barrier when it passes will be protected. Anything outside will be trapped with the Devourers," Vance finished grimly. The alternate Marcus took his position at the primary console. "There's something else you need to know. The protocol requires a conscious observer to guide the cascade, someone who exists partially outside normal space-time. Since I've traveled between realities, I'm the only one who can do it. And you'll die in the process," his counterpart said. "It wasn't a question. I'll cease to exist across all realities simultaneously, but humanity will survive, and that's worth any price." The alternate Marcus began the final activation sequence. "Marcus, I need you to promise me something. When this is over, don't just rebuild. Don't settle for survival. Find another way to reach the stars. Maybe in 1,000 years, 10,000, you'll develop technology that doesn't attract predators from beyond reality." "I promise," Marcus said simply. "Cascade initiation in 60 seconds, Dr. Kowalski announced." Throughout the command center, personnel took their positions for what might be humanity's final act of cosmic defiance. 50 seconds, 45, 40. On the display, the last civilian ships cleared the barrier zone around Earth. Hundreds of thousands of vessels from across human space, carrying refugees and survivors, all heading for the sanctuary of Sol system. 30-second, 25, 20. The alternate Marcus looked up from his console one final time. "Tell me, Marcus, in all your battles, all your exploration, have you ever seen anything as beautiful as a human who refuses to give up?" "Every day," Marcus replied. "Every single day." 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8. "For humanity," the alternate Marcus whispered, echoing the final words of Captain Reeves and his crew. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cascade protocol activated. The change was instantaneous and absolute. Every piece of veiled technology in human space overloaded simultaneously, releasing energies that had been building for decades. The dimensional barriers didn't just seal, they crystallized into a structure that would endure for geological ages. Throughout the galaxy, the Devourers found themselves cut off from their feeding grounds. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had voluntarily severed their connection to the greater cosmos to deny it to their enemies. In the space between realities, ancient entities raged against barriers that could not be breached or broken. The alternate Marcus Holloway smiled as his existence began to unravel across multiple dimensions. In his final moments, he saw every possible timeline where humanity survived, thrived, and eventually found new ways to reach toward the infinite. The price had been paid, but the future remained unwritten. On Sol Station, Marcus Holloway watched, his doppelganger fade away like a ghost at sunrise. Around him, the command staff monitored the aftermath of the cascade. The barriers held. The Devourers were locked out. Humanity was alone in the cosmos, but alive. "Status report, Admiral," Vance requested. "All human installations within the barrier are secure," Dr. Kowalski confirmed. "We're reading successful dimensional seal integrity across the entire protected zone. The colonies are safe." "And beyond the barrier?" "Nothing. The sensors can't penetrate the crystallized dimensional structure. As far as our instruments are concerned, the rest of the universe simply doesn't exist anymore." Marcus stared out at the stars, still visible but now forever beyond reach. Humanity had traded its cosmic destiny for its survival. Future generations would live in a smaller universe, but they would live. "Admiral," he said quietly, "I'd like to volunteer for the long survey mission." Vance nodded. She'd expected this. The long survey was humanity's plan to map every star, every world, every resource within the barrier. It would take centuries, but they needed to know the full extent of their new prison. "Approved, Captain. You'll command the UES Pathfinder, launching in 6 months." She paused, studying his face. "Any regrets?" Marcus thought of his alternate self, of Captain Reeves and his crew, of all the humans who had sacrificed everything for tomorrow. "None, Admiral. We're still here, still human, still reaching for something greater. That's enough." As the reports continued to flow in from across human space, a new chapter in humanity's story began. They had faced the ultimate test and emerged, victorious not through strength or cleverness, but through the simple refusal to surrender. The universe was smaller now, but it was theirs. And in the depths of space, on worlds yet to be discovered within the barrier, humanity began to plan for the day when they might safely return to the stars. The stranger from beyond had shown them the price of cosmic ambition, but also the value of hope. The stars still called to them. Someday, somehow, they would answer. The end.